Hi, welcome to Cracks in the Cement podcast. I am your host, Ronan. I'm surrounded by 3 notebooks of all the notes on what I want to talk about today. Um, and it's rather ironic because I really want to talk about perfectionism and how it relates to trust, trusting ourselves, trusting others, and how that gets mixed up with whiteness. I'm sure that probably a lot of you, I'm going to close my blinds here. A lot of you are familiar with, for a lot of us white folks anyway, we first kind of learned about how perfectionism can be associated with white culture, white supremacy culture through Tima Okune's that document with white supremacy culture in the workplace. So it's probably a topic that's not new to you all, but I feel like it's kind of become this sort of like sort of a knee-jerk perfectionism, get it away, without really looking at it. Like, what does that really mean? Where does it come from? If all we do is just say, oh, perfectionism is bad, that's white supremacy, it just ironically becomes this kind of exaggerated, extreme binary, and without really investigating what it is. So I stumbled upon this topic. It's not like I was like, oh, what do I want to do? I stumbled upon it just from a process I've been going through with apocalypsis, working on my issues with money. Boy, I'm really just jumping into this. Also, I want to say hello, and I hope you're all doing well, and thank you for listening. I'm doing this as a video, and so if you're listening to this only as audio, there's also a video option. And also that's why I don't have the intro music and the outro music. I've been just doing these videos without that. So it might sound a little bit different, the mic quality and just the content. Okay, so how I got here to this topic, perfectionism and trust, basically, is I have a really hard time with money. Like, I have a hard time accepting it. It feels uncomfortable to me to accept it. I think I have, and there are so many of us that feel that way. It's so common. And a lot of us, it seems like, folks that are kind of sales people type folks, it seems like they're all like really kind of, well, I don't know. In my life, they seem to be the ones who are the most comfortable accepting money. And I know that since they were kids, they would like sell things and, always have money to buy candy and stuff like that. And then some of us are just, I'm making major generalizations. I don't know why I'm doing that. I'm probably just thinking about some people in my family. But but now that I've got this, I'm the ED for this nonprofit. It's not just about me. I want the nonprofit to succeed. I want people who are helping to get paid well. I want to have this office. There are all these things. It's not just about me. It's about apocalypsis and it's survival. So because of that, I've been working on my money issues, or just getting more, I don't want to call it money issues. My uncomfortability with money. And so I've been doing different things, but the thing that kind of cracked open, it began last week. I was visiting my mom, and she had this class that she was taking, and it was online. And she was like, you should do these modules, just try it out. And so it's a tapping kind of thing with belief systems that we developed in childhood. Then the woman adds some other things like I accept myself, like little extra thingies and eye movement and stuff like that. But the thing that I learned was I went in there not really knowing exactly the beliefs that I was going to, I thought I knew, actually. I thought it was going to be pretty basic. And then what came out for the very first belief kind of surprised me as far as that relating to money. And that was, she had this question where it was, what role did you play in your family? And the thing that just popped up for me right away was helper. I was a helper. I had, from different marriages, I had 5 younger siblings. I was the oldest. And I was the helper. I babysat for free, for free. I mean, they used to call me the built-in babysitter. I was the built-in babysitter. And was just the role as being part of the family. It wasn't something that you get paid for. And then I had a lot of house chores I had to do. And also, I just want to say that in sharing this, I've definitely come to believe that, yeah, sometimes our parents do things that maybe they could have done differently. But also, I really think that, I mean, for sure. But with my parents, and what I'm talking about here, I think it's just kind of the thing that happens when you're a kid and you're wide-eyed and you're trying to figure stuff out. And then you just form these beliefs and they just get kind of stuck. And it can be partially because of your particular soul goals you have, and that relates to like the personality we come in with, how, what we end up being sensitive about. So I'm not blaming my parents or anything, just naming that my role in the family was helper. And through that role, I realized that the belief, let's see, what was the belief I came up with? I am not to be trusted. So in that role of helper, I learned to look to my parents to be like, tell me exactly how to do the thing I'm helping with, because they would get it felt like they would get so mad at me if I did it wrong, if I made a mistake. And so if I could just do things right, if they just, do exactly what they told me, always looking to them, don't trust myself, because if I trust myself, I'll screw up. And so the belief that I'm letting go of is I can't be trusted. And the belief I'm replacing it with is I am trustworthy and most mistakes just aren't a big deal, And so that in my grown-up self, generally speaking, I am safe. And sometimes we're not safe, but generally speaking, in the everyday stuff and the way, because we're talking about, these beliefs end up affecting everything in our lives, those really deep-seated, like, I'm not trustworthy. That belief, I mean, I am trustworthy, but I mean, like, if I'm believing I'm not trustworthy, how is that showing up in the world? How is that showing up when I'm trying to plug into my leadership capabilities, or I'm trying to sell my product, like the workshops, the work that I do, I'm trying to sell it, and I don't believe in myself. I don't trust myself. So that was kind of the first piece of this. Okay, so the next piece that I was thinking about is God, what was the order of how I did this? Oh, I know. Is I was thinking, oh, I don't trust myself. And that ends up making me just living life like I'm so worried I'm going to make a mistake. And that could be called perfectionism, right? And so I did a little bit of research today, and there in one of the papers I read, there's this sort of distinction between the kind of flip sides of perfectionism. One is a striving. So people who have like striving perfectionism, they oftentimes, or it can help them in school. They might have anxiety. Or I don't know, actually, I'm not so sure about the anxiety level, because when you hear the flip side, it kind of might make more sense. But the striving, wanting to do things perfect, that might be sort of like the Olympians or something. And yeah, it's really hard on their bodies, and it comes at costs for sure. But it's the flip side is the perfectionistic concerns. So we have perfectionistic strivings and perfectionistic concerns. And the perfectionistic concerns in this paper, and I'll put it in the bio in case you want to look at it, or the description of this in the podcast description. So perfectionistic concerns, that is the concern that you're going to make a mistake, and then really extra negative reactions to imperfections. And this oftentimes, or they find that has more of a hindering effect on, say, like students or something. So we've got strivings and concerns. And so okay, so I thought that, that's interesting. And I thought for me, it's definitely coming from a fear of making mistakes. And this is what felt kind of confusing to me, because I thought, well, I know, like, I thought, well, if I'm struggling with perfectionism as far as, how I've been identified, which I'll tell you in a story, in really in a quick antidote, how I was identified is that, but I'm so half-assed in stuff that I do. And like, just for this podcast, I was like, oh, I really should get my notes more organized. And I'm like, fuck it. No, I'm just going in. I'll got my 3 notebooks here. I'll figure it out. But part of that, and I also am a double Virgo, which is kind of interesting. But one of the things I learned in the research also is that an antecedent, a common antecedent to perfectionism is a childhood with a lot of responsibilities. And so that totally resonates with the life that with the childhood that I grew up in. I feel like I had a lot of responsibilities and this fear of messing them up because I was kind of too young really to get it all, know what I was doing. And then feeling like I was just making my parents more stressed out or making their lives even worse if I messed up. So, but reading about the perfectionistic concerns, I was like, aha. And then also in that paper that talked about oftentimes it's a childhood with a big responsibilities, there's oftentimes this instinct to just kind of run away because that feels safer. And so I think that me being kind of half-assed, like with this podcast preparation, is also kind of me like, well, I don't even really want to try. So it's like either it's this worry of fucking up, but then also being kind of chaotic and almost like, well, maybe that's other personality characteristics. I don't want to like overanalyze myself because I really want to get to the point here is that in thinking, so then I was thinking about perfectionism as far as it relates to believing in oneself, or I'm not trustworthy. I'm worried I'm going to screw up all the time. So it's this perfectionistic concern. And then I had this memory of like way back, well, not way back, but before COVID, I was in this week-long, and so for those of you who work with me, you probably heard me talk about this sort of like anti-racist boot camp. It was a week-long. I took a train down to San Francisco for it, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And I was called, like the white folks were just called out on all their shit. Like all of the buffering for us was not there. So it was pretty intense. And I've never experienced anything like that before. And it was the first time. So it was a really unique format that was, really mindfully done. But it was interesting because I was like, oh wow, way back then, there were probably, I don't know, 20 facilitators of color. And I got singled out for being really perfectionistic, like, but more like really afraid to make a mistake. So that type of the perfectionistic concerns, like afraid of making a mistake. And it was so interesting to me, like how clearly they saw that. And I don't think I was, I didn't, well, I can't speak, but yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I was actively causing any harm, but I can't say that. But all I can say is that I feel like I was pretty, I thought I was pretty benign, and how I was being in the space, but as is common, the ways in which whiteness, or the ways in which my whiteness shows up, or white people, the way our whiteness shows up, it's so much more clearly seen by folks of color. And so I just had, I trusted them, but what it was, it wasn't that I doubted them. It was that I kind of thought all white people were like that. And I didn't understand why I was being singled out, especially because I feel like I can be so half-assed with things. But I think what they were seeing was me being in a fearful place, this like, not really breathing and being so afraid I was going to make a mistake. So I started to think about why is perfectionism equated with whiteness? And it's not that white people are the only people who suffer from perfectionism, right? So that's what was kind of curious to me, is we're not the only ones who suffer from it. But maybe we suffer, just the way we show it and it being mixed with whiteness, it ends up causing more harm. So let me just kind of share some of when I just kind of fell into what perfectionism means, like if we show up in a perfectionistic way, what does that mean? First of all, it's thinking that there's a right way to do something, right? So there's I got to figure out what the right thing is. And that's a stereotype for white people, right? Like, just tell me how to do it. What do I do? How do I do it right? And so it's also very cognitive. So it's thinking there's a right way to do it. And that's kind of living up here, is what it feels like to me. And connected to that is a belief in the rules. You know what I mean? Like, I believe there's a right way to do it. And oftentimes in the context I'm buying into the way it's supposed to be. And so in the case of, like, when I have white folks that, or me too, like if I went, why did I go down to San Francisco? Because I want to know the right way to do it. And I'm not saying that that's inherently a bad thing, like, you know, to get information, get other perspectives, learn the ways that I might be causing harm. You know, that is part of learning and growing. But perfectionism is when you think that there is an objectively right way to do something, and that usually doesn't exist. Everything's so context specific. There are a whole bunch of different variables. Different humans react to things in different ways. It's pretty much nearly impossible to have something be completely objective. So thinking there's a right way. And then, yeah, I already said this, a belief in the rules, and that really can show up as far as shame around, like, and this really, I feel like something that kind of feeds into this is, how are we queering our reality? How are we thinking outside of the colonizer or the settler colonizer, the oppressor, the imperialist? How are we, but let's talk about the system we're in. So how can we get outside of the settler colonizer's sense of rules, right and wrong, what's the right way to do it? So that's kind of the opposite of queering something, is a belief in those rules. And Bayo Kamalafe, and he's not the only one, but he talks about like Afrofuturism, like kind of blackifying things. Because once again, being queer, being Black, being, well, those are the two that come to my mind the most, as far as like being so shoved out of the mainstream. And then within that comes the gift of being able to see and to do things differently. And so one of the prices of being white is being accepted into that place where you end up buying these rules and you think they work, because if you work really, really hard and do it just the right way, maybe you do get something for it, you get rewarded for it. So that the belief in the rules. And then something that I just feel like, there's also something that just came to me, and I don't know how true this is, but just thinking about whiteness is feeling like this kind of rigid thing. I was also thinking, I feel like there's sort of like taking life too seriously, or taking ourselves too seriously. And then a belief that if I make a mistake, I'll be rejected. And I think that there's a lot of, for those who grew up with conditional feeling, they feel like there was conditional love, there can be this genuine fear that if you make too much of a mistake, that your parents might disown you. And for those of us in the queer community, I mean, that is a reality, So, and then how does that mix with whiteness? Again, as far as, I feel like all of those things, you don't have to be white to have those little like pieces that came to me. You don't have to be white. It might be more with white folks, but the added thing is, I think, where it gets associated with whiteness and is harmful is when you take that perfectionism and it gets mixed with policing, this thinking that I'm in a place where I can police others. So I have this idea of what the right way is, the best way, that style of perfectionism. And I'm going to tell you how I'm being helpful, right? To me, I'm just being helpful. I'm going to tell you the right way. But there's no right way. There is no right way. And every now and then there, it really is helpful, but oftentimes we just have to check ourselves. Like, is it coming from sort of a perfectionistic policing place? And then the other thing I was thinking is, for my style of perfectionism, well, no, that's not true. I want to give a grand, I mean, yes, it is true. And I want to make this even more grand, this kind of thing that I've been realizing. And it's something I've heard, but you can just hear things again and again, and then something clicks, you're like, oh, I get it. The thing where if you don't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. Well, one time I had this experience, I don't know what was going on. Like every now and then I'm just super connected to the spirit realm or other dimensions or something. So I was in one of those times when I was just kind of feeling, I was plugged into the multidimensionality of things, or my awareness was there. And I could feel this portal in my heart that, like, I love myself. And then it's like it opened up from my back, and I could feel myself love like everybody on earth, or all the beings on earth. Like, just the love was like huge. So it wasn't like some like, yeah, just love yourself, you'll love everybody else, which always kind of fills out here. It was literally like, it was like a portal in my heart, and I could just love everybody. It was amazing. And so same thing with trust. I was like, oh shit, if I don't trust myself, it's really easy for me not to trust other people, or there'll only be like these people that maybe I've got on this perfectionistic pedestal that I trust. But how does that show up for me? If I'm not trusting myself, then that means if there's somebody who is like, I want to give you my money for your offering, you're of value. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to support what I'm doing? Are you sure? Or maybe there's somebody who is like, I remember one time, oh, what was her name during COVID? I was really following her. Oh, I can't think of her name, but it was a Black woman who, it was like how to get your business going, or something like that. I can't remember, but also like a spiritual kind of woo vibe. And she had a free offering, and there was some white person was like, you really should be charging for this. And she was like, I'm deciding to not charge anything for this. That's what I want to do. But it was like that white person probably not trusting themselves, therefore was not trusting her. And so how does, so it being in a white body, that's not showing up so great. And then also, I was also thinking, was there another one? I can't remember. There was probably another one, but it doesn't really matter. I think you all get the point here. And then there was this other thing that I heard, and I've got it in quotation marks, and I can't remember who said it, but I thought this was so beautiful. So with apocalypsis, I was like, basically, I started to really get rattly and doubt myself recently, because people aren't signing up for the courses like they were, like enrollment's kind of going down. It's like, well, maybe it's the summer. But I started to get that self-doubt where it's like, who do you think you are? Why are you doing this? What, oh, you need to focus on something totally different. Like, just scrap all this. So I noticed it, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to buy into that. Stuff takes time. What do I need to do some more outreach? Basically just calm the fuck down. And so it was beautiful. And also I realized, okay, worst case scenario, I can't have an office anymore. Okay, like, I'll be okay. Worst case scenario, apocalypse shuts down. Okay, I'll be okay, like, I'll go get another job, and what if I can't get another job? I don't know, but it doesn't help to just keep going. And and I mean, as far as like the doom thinking, or the downward spiral of what ifs and negativity, it's just one step at a time. And this line that I just thought was so beautiful, it was, okay, here it is. You ready? Let the process clarify you. Let the process clarify you. And so what it means to me, and I feel like what the person was getting to, is when something feels like a mistake, like as a white person, if I say something, or did something that I'm like, oh shit, I know I just caused harm, or I probably did, or maybe I did, that whole, what is it? The whole perfectionistic concerns, but it's really also, I don't want to make somebody feel shitty. Like I genuinely don't. And I don't want my whiteness, my condition of whiteness to lash out at other people, at specifically folks of color in my life. I don't want that. So if I let the process clarify me, that means maybe I do need to give an apology. Maybe I'm like, I just need to do a real quick get in, get out. I noticed I said this thing that felt shitty coming out of my white face or whatever. I'm sorry. So sometimes that is needed. And even if I do an apology, it still can leave me, I could leave me feeling rattled, and I could obsess or just ruminate, stew on it. But if I let the process clarify me, then what I do is it takes out the good, bad judgment, which discernment is important. You know what I mean? And so it's not that it's not caring. It's not an apathy. Instead, it's like noticing, how did that feel? How might that have landed? How might that have impacted somebody else? What do I want to do differently? And so for me, it might be to make sure that I breathe and that I'm grounded before I interact with another person, especially if it's a person of color. Make sure I'm grounded, make sure I'm breathing, because the more rattled I am, the less disconnected I am from my body, the more likely my whiteness, my condition of whiteness is going to show itself, because it's just more kind of, it's not being as checked. So let the process clarify you. Also feels, for me, it gives the feeling of, the word process it's this ongoing thing. I like the word iterative. It's ongoing, it's iterative, it's relational. It's not just me by myself, it's relational. It does involve trust. And then the clarify for me is always coming back to, what is sort of the thesis statement of my life? How am I walking with integrity? Why am I saying what I'm saying? Why am I doing what I'm doing? That, to keep coming back to that clarity piece. So it's a process, and there's this thesis statement, and it's all relational and iterative. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you all. Let me look at my notes here. Oh, what I would really like to do too is to plug this incredible financial coach who is the one who inspired me to do this podcast, because they do 30-minute free consultations. And I had a consultation with them today, and it blew my mind. It was incredible. And we were talking about queerness and kink and what it means to be a sexual top, and how perfectionism can come into that, or the perfectionistic concerns. Like, does this feel good? And that kind of energy, how it's not the sexiest vibe, but how sexuality, queerness, our relationship to money, our relationship to whiteness, how white supremacy has impacted us, our relationship to our bodies, all of the, like, you cannot separate these things out. And so one of the things that they were saying, their name is, let's see here, Candace Fox, and I'll put a link to their website in this podcast description. But they were like, what does it mean to like kink your relationship with money? And I mean, and for me, I would add like queerify my relationship with money, and our relationship with how we're surfing life. And also, I mean, and to be white, to be humble, but to also be so grateful for being alive and getting to experience a physical body, and how what kind of energy, I talk about this a lot, but what kind of energy are we entering a space with? And if it is, hi, you know, how just this kind of shrinking, apologetic, fearful concern to making mistakes versus this embodied, grounded, humble, like I am here, and I can feel my aliveness, I can feel my bigness. And I don't mean bigness as in taking up too much space. I mean my bigness just in taking up the right amount of space. Because when we shrink, we also are we can be pulling energy from people. Or if they are really plugged in, they're just gonna block us. Because who has time for that? So especially if it's coupled with a fearful white person can do do all kinds of harmful things. And yeah, and if we can't trust ourselves, we're not trusting other folks. So that's not good. That's not, oh, sorry. That's not helpful. Okay, that's it. I'm done babbling here. So thank you so much for listening. Also, I'm going to put a little plug in the podcast description for the professional development offerings that we have right now. We're coming out of summer. I'm hoping y'all sign up for some of my stuff. Also, if money ever ends up, if you want to do one of my offerings, but money is a barrier, I'm totally open to payment plans. I know that's my jam. Like sometimes there's some really cool shit out there that I'm like, well, I gotta pay rent, but if it's divided into like 4 months or something, I usually can manage that. So if you got something like that going, can let me know. Okay, thank you so much for listening.